Have you ever wondered what separates a living organism from something that has no life? A human being is alive, a dog is alive, a tree is alive. But what about a virus? What about a catalyst? What about fire? And more importantly, how can JAMB WAEC turn something as basic as what is biology into a question that students get wrong? In this lesson, we're going back to the very beginning. Hello everyone, welcome back to Basiofon Academy. Today, we are learning Introduction to Biology, Characteristics of Living Things, and Classification. This is lesson 1, so make sure you pay attention because the concepts we are learning here will form the foundation for many other biology topics. Let's get started. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to define biology, identify its major branches, explain the characteristics of living things. Remember those characteristics using Mrs. GREN, mnemonics. Explain biological classification and identify the 5 kingdoms. And of course, we'll finish with exam-style questions, so don't just watch passively. Let's start with the most obvious question. What is biology? Biology is the scientific study of life and living organisms. Notice 2 important ideas there. Life and living organisms. Biology doesn't simply involve memorizing names of plants and animals. It involves studying their structure, their function, how they grow, reproduce, obtain food, respond to their environment, and interact with one another. If they are studying how the human heart works, that's biology. If they are studying how plants manufacture food, that's biology. If they are studying how organisms interact with the environment, that's also biology. Let's make the word itself easy to remember. Biology comes from the Greek roots associated with life and study. Bio refers to life, and logy refers to the study or knowledge of the subject. So when you see biology, think the study of life. Simple. Now, biology is a very broad subject, so we divide it into different branches. 2 traditional major branches you should know are botany and zoology. Botany is the study of plants. Zoology is the study of animals. Here's an easy way to remember them. Think about a botanical garden. What do we find there? Plants. So botany, plants. For zoology, think about a zoo. What do you find in a zoo? Animals. So zoology, animals. There are several other branches. Genetics deals with heredity and variation. So when you're studying how characteristics are passed from the parents to offspring, you're dealing with genetics. Ecology. Ecology deals with relationship between organisms and the environment. Microbiology deals with microorganisms. Anatomy deals mainly with structure, and physiology deals with functions. Here's a useful distinction: anatomy, structure, physiology, function. So if I ask you about the structure of the heart, think anatomy. If I ask you how the heart performs its function, think physiology. Let's delve into one important section of this lesson. How do we know something is alive? Living organisms perform certain life processes, and there's a very clear mnemonics used to remember them. Mrs. GREN. M stands for movement, R respiration, S sensitivity, G growth, R reproduction, E excretion, N nutrition. Let's go through each one carefully because simply memorizing the letters isn't enough. JAMB WAEC may test your understanding. The first one is movement. Movement is the ability of an organism or part of an organism to change position. Now here is where students sometimes make a mistake. They think movement means an organism must move from one location to another. That's not necessarily true. Animals can move from place to place, but plants can also show movement. For example, a plant shoot may grow towards a source of light. So remember, movement does not necessarily mean locomotion. It can also involve movement of parts of an organism. Next is respiration. Respiration is the process by which energy is released from food. Why is that energy important? Because organisms need energy for movement, growth, repair, reproduction, and other life processes. Now, this is an important JAMB trap. Listen carefully. Respiration is not the same as breathing. Breathing involves the movement or exchange of respiratory gases. Respiration is a chemical process involved in releasing energy from food. So if JAMB or WAEC asks you, what process releases energy from food? The answer is respiration, not breathing. Don't mix them up. Next is sensitivity. Sensitivity is the ability of an organism to detect and respond to changes in the environment. The change that causes a response is called a stimulus, and the reaction to that stimulus is the response. So think, stimulus gives us response. For example, imagine you touch a very hot object. It acts as a stimulus. Your hand is quickly withdrawn. That's a response. Plants also respond to stimuli. For example, the plant may grow towards light. Anyone responds to sound, temperature, touch, and many other stimuli. Next is growth. So growth is a permanent increase in the size and dry mass of an organism. Growth is associated with processes such as cell division and cell enlargement. Think about a seedling. It starts small, it develops more cells, it becomes larger. Eventually, it becomes a mature plant. That's growth. Notice the keyword, permanent. Growth is not simply temporary swelling. It's a lasting increase associated with the development of an organism. Next is reproduction. Reproduction is the process by which organisms produce new individuals of their own kind. There are two broad types, sexual reproduction and asexual reproduction. Sexual reproduction generally involves the fusion of a male and female gametes and produces offspring with genetic variation. Asexual reproduction involves one parent and does not involve the fusion of gametes. For example, binary fission in bacteria is a form of asexual reproduction. Why is reproduction important? Because without reproduction, organisms will eventually disappear from the earth when existing individuals dies. Next is excretion. Excretion is the removal of metabolic waste products from an organism. Examples include carbon dioxide, urea, excess water, and excess mineral salts. Now here's another examination trap. Students often confuse excretion with ejection. Excretion deals with metabolic waste produced by the body's activity. Ejection is the removal of undigested food from the digestive tract. So, urea, excretion, undigested food, ejection. Remember that distinction. The final letter in Mrs. Green is nutrition. Nutrition refers to the process by which organisms obtain and use nutrients. Organisms need nutrients for energy, growth, repair, and maintenance. There are different modes of nutrition. Plants are generally autotrophic. This means they manufacture their own organic food mainly through photosynthesis. Animals are generally heterotrophic. They obtain organic food from other organisms. Fungi are also heterotrophic, although they obtain nutrients differently from animals. Let's pause here. You should now be able to explain all 7 characteristics. Let's say them together. M. Movement. R. Respiration. S. Sensitivity. G. Growth. R. Reproduction. E. Excretion. N. Nutrition. Mrs. Green. But don't just memorize the mnemonics. Remember what each process means, because in exams you won't be asked which letter represents respiration. You'll be asked to describe the process and identify it. Let me test you with this. Which of these is not a characteristic of living organisms? A. Respiration. B. Reproduction. C. Crystallization. D. Growth. Pause the video, think about it. The answer is C. Crystallization. Crystallization is not a characteristic of living organisms. This is why you have to understand the characteristics and not just quote Mrs. Green. Now let's move to another important concept. Classification. There are millions of organisms in the world. Imagine trying to study every organism individually without a system of organization. It will be extremely difficult. That's why scientists classify organisms. Biological classification is the arrangement of organisms into groups based on their similarities and differences. Classification helps scientists identify organisms, study them, compare them, and understand their relationship. For JAMB and WAEC foundation, we will use the traditional 5-kingdom classification. The 5 kingdoms are Monera, Protista, Fungi, Plantae, and Animalia. Let's go through them one by one. First, Kingdom Monera. Monera contains organisms that are generally prokaryotic and mostly unicellular. The most common example is bacteria. Cyanobacteria are also traditionally placed in Monera. What does prokaryotic mean? It means the cell lacks a true membrane-bound nucleus. So if JAMB gives you bacterium belongs to which kingdom? Think Monera. Next is Kingdom Protista. Protists are generally eukaryotic and many are unicellular. Examples include amoeba, paramecium, igluna. Remember the examples because JAMB can use them to test classification. If you see amoeba, think Protista, paramecium, Protista, igluna, Protista. Next is Kingdom Fungi. Examples include mushrooms, yeast, molds. Fungi are eukaryotic organisms. Most are multicellular, although some, such as yeast, are unicellular. They don't contain chlorophyll and therefore do not manufacture food through photosynthesis. They obtain nutrients from organic materials. So, mushroom, fungi, yeast, fungi, mold, fungi. Next is Kingdom Plantae. Examples include maize, mango, palm, ferns. Plants are multicellular eukaryotes. Most contains chlorophyll and manufacture organic food through photosynthesis. Therefore, they are mainly autotrophic. So when you see green plants, think Plantae. Finally, Kingdom Animalia. Examples include humans, fish, lions, butterflies. Animals are multicellular eukaryotics. They are trophic because they obtain their own food through other organisms. Unlike plant cells, animal cells do not have cell walls. Humans belong to Kingdom Animalia. Let's put everything together. Monera, generally prokaryotic and mostly unicellular. Protista, eukaryotic and mostly unicellular. Fungi, eukaryotic, mostly unicellular and heterotrophic. Plantae, multicellular, eukaryotic, and mainly autotrophic. Animalia, multicellular, eukaryotic, and heterotrophic. Don't try to memorize this table blindly. Use the examples to help you understand it. Bacteria, Monera, amoeba, Protista, mushroom, fungi, maize, Plantae, humans, Animalia. Now let's test some common traps. Question 1. Which kingdom contains bacteria? The answer is Monera. Which characteristic distinguishes respiration from breathing? Respiration involves the release of energy from food. Question 3. Which of these is an example of excretion? Urea. Why? Because urea is a metabolic waste product. The option says undigested food. That's egestion, not excretion. Let's quickly recap today's lesson. Biology is a scientific study of life and living organisms. We looked at some branches of biology: botany, zoology, genetics, ecology, microbiology, anatomy, physiology. Then we learned the characteristics of living things using Mrs. Green: movement, respiration, sensitivity, growth, reproduction, excretion, nutrition, and finally, we looked at the 5 kingdoms: Monera, Protista, Fungi, Plantae, and Animalia. And that brings us to the end of this lesson. But we're not done with Introduction to Biology. In the next lesson, we'll look at levels of organization in living things. We'll move from cell, tissue, organ, system to organism. We'll break down each level, use examples, and tackle exam-style questions. If you're preparing seriously for WAEC and JAMB, don't stop at watching videos. You need to practice what you learn. That's where we have Introduction to Biology View Pack for students who want topic-based practice and exam preparation. And if you need personalized guidance, private biology lessons are also available. Subscribe to Basiofon Academy, turn on notifications, and continue with the next lesson. Until next time, learn, practice, drill, excel. Remember, our goal is to raise academic giants for global influence.